Hi, this is Barry, and welcome to the next interview for the Simplicity Zen podcast. I have back today, I think, Kokyo, you were my second guest, is that right? My third or
Mm,
something? Yeah,
Sometime a while back, yeah.
yeah. And so I'm super excited to have Kokyo back. Kokyo Henkel, this is his formal bio. He's been practicing Zen since 1990 in residence at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, Green Gulch Zen Center, no Abode Hermitage in Mill Valley, Bukkokuji Monastery in Japan, and Santa Cruz Zen Center. He was ordained as a Zen priest in 1994 by Tenshin Anderson Roshi and received Dharma Transmission from him in 2010. Kokyo has also been practicing with the Tibetan Dzogchen great completeness teacher, Sokaji, no, sorry, help me with the pronunciation.
Tsoknyi.
Tsoknyi, sorry. Um, Rinpoche since 2003 in California, Colorado, and Kathmandu, as well as other Tibetan teachers. He completed Vajrayana ngondro, am I saying that right?
Ngondro.
Ngondro,
Ngondro.
which are foundational practices in 2020. Kokyo's retreat near Tassajara, called Bright Window Hermitage, welcomes Buddhist practitioners of all traditions. Thank you so much for joining us, Kokyo.
You're welcome.
Cool. So I'd like to start off our discussion talking about your hermitage. That from a a physical perspective, that's probably been the biggest change in your life since we've last done our interview. Can you tell us a little bit about the hermitage and how it came to be?
Yeah, so I'm living in this place called Bright Window Hermitage.
And that's where you are now. The
That's
people
where I am
are
now. This
people
is
who are
the
watching on YouTube and are looking. This is
yeah,
he's at the hermitage. That's what you're seeing in the background.
yeah, this is the Zendo. Where we take down all those scrolls on the wall for group sitting. It's basically just a very small house with just this Zendo, a bathroom, and a round yurt-like kitchen,
Hmm.
dining area.
Hmm.
And but it's 40 acres of land in the mountains
Hmm.
on Tassajara Road. So some people might know Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, inland of Big Sur in Santa Lucia Mountains. It's on Tassajara Road, the other end of the road from the monastery.
So
Some
where so
coincidence.
for those who have been to Tassajara, there's like a parking lot. There's at
Mhm.
a house, and there's a parking lot where you can get you can drive yourself down, or they'll drive you. Like Tassajara priest will drive you down. So where is it relative to that parking lot, like the meeting
Yes,
spot?
it's 1 mile up from that parking lot.
Okay.
So it's definitely that end of the long 14-mile road.
Hmm.
But the road goes up steeply from the parking lot. So it's the first kind of bend where you have a big view all the way out. You can see across Monterey Bay to Santa Cruz
Oh
Mountains,
wow. So
hundreds
you
of
can see the
miles.
ocean from your place.
It's a little bit above the ocean.
Okay.
But the fog
Hmm.
sometimes creeps in the Carmel Valley there, all the
Hmm.
way to the Hermitage from the ocean. Uh,
Is it mostly a? Is it get really hot in the summer, or is it mostly?
yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Although I would say Tassajara, 14 miles down the road, is a little bit more inland.
Hmm.
So it's usually about 10 degrees cooler here than
Oh wow.
Tassajara in the summer, and maybe 10 degrees warmer in the winter.
Interesting.
It's also we're more like up on a ridge looking down. Tassajara's in this deep valley, so it,
Hmm.
it gets really cold down there.
Yeah. And what's the natural environment around? Is that like chaparral
Yeah,
and oak
yeah,
trees and
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. 5 different types of oak
uh
trees and a lot of just open space.
like grassland?
There's a few more houses, up the road, uh, 10 or so maybe. But the nearest neighbors to the Hermitage are maybe half a mile
Hmm.
away. Or this maybe a little bit closer, but you can't see them
Hmm.
or hear them. So it's very secluded and quiet. And but still a half-hour drive to the nearest little village where you can pick up food.
Hmm.
Um, kind of remote. And this place came to be. It was kind of a long-term dream of mine after living at uh, community residential Zen centers, mostly
Hmm.
Tassajara and Green Gulch Farm, and in Japan in the monastery, and no Abode Hermitage is a similar place to this. It's very small. Um, it was a small community of
Hmm.
Zen practitioners, and so after being and then Santa Cruz Zen Center was a town Zen center, but also communal practice. So 30 years of really communal practice.
Hmm.
Uh, I was interested in having a place that's a little more like emphasizing solitary retreat,
Hmm.
uh, which is a kind of, I think, a little missing link in the American Zen world.
Interesting.
And,
Could we dive in there real quick before we
yeah,
continue on with this? That's an interesting point. Do you see precedents in Zen history and the Zen literature of more kind of hermit like or hermitage like practice? Certainly, like there's Cold Mountain. Hakuin did a lot of practice in the mountains, but Dogen, but maybe by contrast, was always in a Dharma hall. So I'm curious what you see historically as precedent that we're
yeah,
not seeing in American.
yes, yes. So
Yeah,
as you mentioned, yeah, in China from the early, well, of course, going back even further to India, Shakyamuni Buddha, our great
that's true.
Tibetan
Right.
founder,
Uh-huh.
practiced solitary meditation for um, some say 6 years. First, when he first left home, he found teachers and
Hmm.
practiced in community, as
Hmm.
it was happening in India in that time,
Hmm.
pre-Buddhist yogi communities. And then he felt like he wanted to go deeper, so he went off on his own and sat for some years on his own. He begged for food, so he had some interaction with people. He wasn't that remote, but really practicing alone, and that was the Buddha's path.
Hmm.
And still people in India practice that way. And then when Buddhism came to China, as you mentioned, Cold Mountain poems are classic
Hmm.
poems by Han Shan, Cold Mountain, who is uh, a mountain hermit.
Hmm.
And there's been a long tradition up to the present day of hermit practice in China.
Yeah. What's that movie called?
Yeah, there's a movie, Monk's White Clouds,
Yeah, Amongst White Clouds. Yeah, such a great movie. I probably
really
watched it.
inspiring. Yeah,
Probably
I
watched
think
it 40 times. I bet.
that
Yeah.
was part of the inspiration, I think, too, for this
Yeah.
place to
Yeah.
manifest. This is about present day Chinese Buddhist and Taoist hermits.
Yeah. That
Some
that
live in
last
community.
guy, the last guy they interviewed, who like they had to wait outside, and he was in such deep samadhi he didn't hear their knocking. Remember that guy? And yeah, this
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the brightness from his eyes just is mind blowing.
A lot of those hermits, very
Yeah.
different personalities, men and
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Um, and I highly recommend the movie, and
Hmm.
Derek does too.
And he redid it. I think there's a second one. It's basically the same footage but cut differently, a little narratively.
Mm.
What is it called?
And
I'll
Edward Berger, the filmmaker, also
right.
did documentaries, a kind of artistic documentary about life in the Chinese Zen
Is it
monastery.
called No Mind or something or Zen
One
Mind?
Mind, One
One
Mind.
Mind. Yeah.
A little bit more about in the monasteries as
Yeah.
opposed to the hermits.
Yes. Very very serene movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And some of the hermits there live completely in solitude and don't see anyone and grow their own food in a garden. And
Hmm.
some live in small communities.
Hmm.
And uh, and then that film is also based on a book called Road to Heaven. So the
Right.
filmmaker,
Right. Right. Yeah.
book by Red Pine, the
Uh-huh.
translator went in search of these hermits and found them and wrote a book about them.
Hmm.
So that's China from the earliest days of Buddhism to the present. And in Japan, the hermit tradition is not as widespread, but as you mentioned, Hakuin Zenji, the great
Hmm.
reviver of Rinzai Zen in Japan,
Hmm.
spent a lot of time in his earlier days before he was so well known. doing a lot of solitary practice in a small temple. I think not intentionally trying to be far from society. People, I
Mhm.
think, could come and visit him, but they didn't.
Right.
And he just practiced alone a lot, and he
Yeah.
writes about that in a very inspired way.
Yeah.
And
And
he
then
was in the 1700s.
yeah, Japan has that tradition, yaksubutsu or something like the mountain monks.
Oh yeah, the
Well,
Yamabushi.
Yamabuchi, yeah, yeah.
Yamabushi,
They
yeah,
do. It's not, I think, exclusively Buddhist. I think it can
that's right.
be,
Yeah,
Shinto,
Buddhist
Buddhist kind of.
non-denominational.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I think, but they're I think that so that they certainly have that tradition,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and a lot
Mountain.
of yeah, sorry, and a lot of times I feel like the Zen that's passed down to us largely is the teachings of the teachers that were made abbots of the big state monasteries in both Japan and China.
Yeah.
And so that's how we even know about them because they were abbots of these really important state monasteries,
Mhm.
and the literati made sure their teachings were added to the records and come down to us. But I suspect there's was a very large kind of hidden transmission through the you know the unofficial monasteries that was probably just as important. We just don't know about it because there wasn't state officials to document it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like another example in China is Stone House, was a Chinese hermit that Red Pine translated his poems,
Mm-hmm.
and so he I think wasn't that well known in his time, but I think he spent his whole life in the kind of remote hermitages.
Yeah.
And then also in Japan at the same time as Hakuin in the Rinzai school, this is the 1700s,
Mm-hmm.
Menzan Zenji was a Soto Zen
Mm-hmm.
ancestor. I think also, more in more recent times than Dogen and Keizan, Menzan's one of the most important Soto lineage teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Not so well known in America, but he wrote a lot
Mm-hmm.
and so he has a record of doing a 3-year solitary retreat,
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah,
1,000 days, so
that's
about
great.
3 years.
Yeah, and he's
And
such a institutional guy too.
yeah,
You
yeah. So
know.
I think maybe before and after that,
Yeah.
he practiced in the monasteries
Mm-hmm.
and helped revive the monastic guidelines and so on. But he did this 3-year solo retreat. I think also maybe in a town, and maybe people would come and visit him, but he was practicing alone. And I'd love to know more about it. But what I've heard is that he would just sit zazen the whole time, but during breaks, he would study Dogen's Shobogenzo.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a study zazen retreat. And I think maybe several times he read through the whole Shobogenzo.
What are those study retreats called in Soto again?
Oh,
I
there's
know.
Genzo-e
Do you
retreat.
think that's do you think that's traditionally kind of where they stem from, like as far as
I don't know
influence
if
goes? Yeah.
they're based on that, but
Yeah.
yeah, they started in maybe a century or two later as a
Mm-hmm.
regular thing in the monasteries,
Mm-hmm.
starting at Heiji in Japan, studying the Shobogenzo. But I don't think maybe anybody would do like for 3 years just study Shobogenzo and sit zazen all the time.
Right.
And then because of that, Menzan really kind of knew Dogen's mind, and then
Mm-hmm.
he went on to be one of the great commentators on Dogen.
Yeah, and this is an era where I think technically it was illegal to share the Shobogenzo to outside
Oh yeah, yeah, but
lineage holders.
I don't know about illegal, but it wasn't well known at all. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a brief time where it was actually illegal because like the Shobogenzo was actually proof of lineage attainment for a while because you had these secret Shobogenzo documents
Mhm.
and they didn't want them to be you know like carelessly thrown around. Yeah.
Then also another maybe most famous Zen hermit of Japan is Ryokan,
Right. Wonderful.
who wrote a lot of
Yeah.
poems and um, was sort of a carefree, um, forgetful, but very well-loved monk who liked to play with the kids when he'd go
Mhm.
on his begging rounds, run into the local kids. But he lived out in the forest in a little hut.
he's the Zen priest who wrote the poem like where he was robbed by a thief, and he says like, "Oh, I wish I could give him this moon as well," or something.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Very, very simple life.
I you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think he's also the priest where like, he didn't really want any disciples, but like a lot of people saw him as a pretty deeply realized person. And this one guy is like, "I really want you to be my teacher," and he's like, "No, you couldn't live my life." He's like, "No, teacher, please." And so he let him, and then like really quickly within the tutelage, they found a corpse, and there was food on the corpse, and Ryokan sat there, started eating, and I think the food was kind of rotten, like next to this corpse. And student's like, "Yep, you're right. I can't do this. I'm done."
Oh, I hadn't heard that story.
Yeah, I think it's him. I might be conflating priests, but I'm pretty sure it was him.
And then
Um,
also, in, really mo going up to very modern times, um, the Rinzai teacher Shodo Harada Roshi, living,
mhm,
wonderful teacher, he
mhm.
did a period of solitary retreat. I'm not sure for how long, maybe a year or more.
Right.
Not sure, in the mountains in Japan. After living in the monastery and feeling like the monastery was too distracting for him,
Yeah.
he went to practice in the mountains.
And a lot of his students will actually do entire Angos solo retreats. There's like a gazebo type thing up in the mountains, like because their monastery like backs up to a mountain, and there's lots of trails and stuff there. And apparently, there's this kind of gazebo or hermitage type place. And I've talked to a few people who have done an entire Ango up there as a solo retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So that's pretty unusual in modern Japan.
Yeah.
I think partly the hermit tradition isn't never got as widespread because Japan's small islands,
Hmm.
compared to these vast expanses in China. So there's just not enough space for people to find really remote locations.
Right. And a lot of a lot of China is very temperate, where you can grow vegetables and stuff. Where Japan has really unforgiving winters, and I think it's probably harder to support yourself.
Yeah, yeah, could be. Yeah,
Yeah.
so at Sogenji, Shodo Harada Roshi's monastery, they call that kind of hermitage doku sesshin.
Oh, okay.
So we have this term dokusan means solitary meeting,
Hmm.
and sesshin means a retreat to gather the mind. So solitary sesshin,
That's
doku
great.
sesshin.
Yeah. And then one more example of a hermitage. Have you read the book Bones of the Master? It's
Oh, who
about
wrote
a
that?
what's his name? He was this poet
Oh,
living in
Sheng
upstate.
Yan, right? Sheng Yan.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, yes,
He,
yes, yes. I did read that a long time
yeah, I
back.
love that book. It's one of my favorite books. But him, both him and his master, the Bones he went to find, they both did solo retreats quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
For I think a while,
yeah,
years. Hmm.
yeah, like and a lot of times when the monks would want to meet with the master, they would actually have to hike up this mountain to this cave, and one of them got eaten by a wolf or something, like on his way up there. So I mean, it's a different world than we practice in. I think.
Yeah, yeah, Master
Yeah.
Sheng Yen
Mhm.
writes very beautifully about that. He was having a
Yeah.
hard time, but just
Mhm.
kept practicing, and something shifted for him, and then it all became
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah.
Same with Shodo Harada Roshi. He was sort of struggling, and then
Yeah.
something shifted for him, and it
Yeah.
went.
I think his kind of awakening story was he was up there on his retreat, and some lay people came. They were kind of doing like Buddhist pilgrimage of some sort. So they recognized him as a monk, and they're like, "Oh, it's so great! You can come up here and practice, do this special practice." And something about that conversation, he's like, "Wait, I didn't need to come up here. It was always here." It was one of those moments, and he's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go back to the monastery," but he had to have gone there to,
and I think it was a lot about gratitude too. He was
yeah,
struggling.
yeah,
Yeah, the person says, I have to go back and work the rest of the week. I can only come up on
yeah,
the weekends, but you get to be here all the time. And he was like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah. Yeah. So how
yeah,
that was the switch for him. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So anyway, so back on track. Sorry for the long tangent, but so you have the desire for a more of a hermitage type environment.
yeah.
Like how
And
did
and
it?
also I might mention that we're talking about the precedent in the Zen tradition for hermit practice and
Hmm.
India, China, and Japan. And Korea also has a strong
Oh, okay.
Zen hermit
Yeah.
tradition up to the present day.
I didn't know that. That's
But
cool.
also to mention in this country, in America, there are, I shouldn't say a lot because there's not that many Buddhist practitioners at all, but there's, I would say, a strong tradition, particularly Tibetan tradition of
Hmm.
solitary retreat, of course, in Tibet and India, but
Hmm.
um, but in modern America too, there's some places. There's one place called Land of Calm Abiding that's actually near here, the same mountains, but closer
I
to
didn't know it.
Big
Yeah.
Sur, where I've done several retreats. That was a kind of an inspiration for this place.
You used to do retreats in Colorado too at
Yeah,
your
yeah, they have a lot.
teachers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Preston, Colorado. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tsoknyi Rinpoche, my teacher, has a solar retreat center, and there's several others
Hmm.
uh, where I've done them. And there's this one in near Big Sur. There's one American monk in Tibetan tradition who's been in solitary retreat for decades, and
Hmm.
he's a lifer.
Yeah. It makes me think. I forget which order it is, but they're the ones who make the chartreuse liqueur in
Oh
France.
yeah.
They're basically full time, and they actually take vows of uh, not speaking. Unless it's like something about business or something. Like
There's that Carthusian monastery.
that sounds maybe yeah that sounds right.
There's
Well, yeah.
another movie called Into Great Silence.
Oh, okay, yeah. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good kind of sequel to Amongst White Clouds,
Oh,
the
okay.
Christian monastery. It's not so much hermit practice, but
Yeah.
similar
But
the
yeah,
remote.
but yeah, I mean they kind of have their like hermits within the monastery. Like they
Yes.
sit all day long in their cells. They actually call them cells, meditating, like literally just, you know, you
Yeah.
know, and then they go and I think their food is brought to them and they eat in their cells. And the only time they leave and see other people is for mass, and I guess it's called the hours. I forget exactly
Mhm.
what that means, but there's like some sort of liturgical
Yeah.
services throughout the day. Like they leave for that, but
Yeah.
otherwise they're living as hermits inside their cells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with this area is maybe draws hermits in. So also out near Big Sur, near this land of Kamabiding, is a Catholic monastery called New Camaldoli Hermitage.
Okay.
And that order they call the monastery a hermitage
Hmm.
because similar to what you're describing, they spend most of the time alone in their cell and come together for group prayer. And
Hmm.
then since the monastery group practice is called the hermit life, then
Hmm.
they also have what they call recluses. So those are kind of graduates from the hermitage. I think you have to have done 30 years or something
Hmm.
in the more communal hermit life there
Hmm.
to be allowed to then become a recluse. And a lot of them are also for life, which means they're off in a little hut further up the mountain, and
So they're
people go.
even less communally
Yeah,
connected.
yeah, the
Yeah.
recluses are really, they don't come together for anything.
Interesting. Wow.
And I heard that when there was a big fire at Tassajara, right, some years ago in this whole Ventana wilderness, and the fire came very close to that Catholic hermitage, and
Mhm.
some of the recluses wouldn't come out. They were trying to evacuate and ask them to, it's you got to come out and come into town. The fire's getting too close, and like, oh, we'll just die here.
Wow.
And if
That's
they didn't,
that's
the
a
fire did come close, but it
that's a
didn't.
pretty deep gear of practice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
people make some strong commitments.
Yeah.
And I think interesting to ask, especially in modern society in this country, why would anybody do this? And even is it kind of self-centered to do such a thing?
Hmm. Yeah. It's
Uh,
kind of maybe the Theravada versus Mahayana models.
yeah,
So
although as the hermit practices we've been talking about are all Mahayana tradition. I think there are some
yeah. No,
Theravada.
I meant as like a metaphor for the Catholics. Like like maybe they're more Theravada like
Uh,
those particular, yeah. But
yeah, I think,
yeah,
yeah, I'm not sure
yeah.
how they think of it exactly.
And
But
not to get too woo woo, but I'm a big believer in the concept of a Dharma field,
mhm.
and I really do think deep, powerful practitioners create Dharma fields that help those even. There's like an energy current
Yeah,
across the
yeah,
world that I like. I don't want to get too, you know,
no, I agree. I
and
agree.
so I think even a practitioner who's off doing solo retreat, I think they're contributing to that Dharma field, and
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, yeah,
so I don't think it's totally selfish in that respect. I think there's still,
yeah.
there's still something important there going on.
Also, we have forgot to mention Bodhidharma, our great
All right.
first
Yeah.
ancestor in China was
Yeah.
mostly his life was as a solitary hermit, actually,
True. True.
in this
Yeah.
cave up
Yeah.
above Shaolin Monastery. I've been to Bodhidharma's cave, and it's this very small indent in
Uh-huh.
rock way up on a mountainside. And anyway, they called Bodhidharma, and this is case one of the Book of Serenity, right?
Hmm.
The the emperor says, "Who was that?" And the minister juror says, "Oh, Your Majesty, that was Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva, Mahasattva,
Yeah.
transmitting the Buddha mind seal." So
Hmm.
there's some connection of Bodhidharma with his solitary kind of scowling practice.
Hmm.
Uh, um, being called the manifestation of great compassion in our
Yeah.
Zen tradition.
That's a great reference. Thank you. So with that framework of the motivation, can you talk a little bit about the logistics of um, you know why this place? How did it come together? Just anything you
Yeah,
want to share in that respect?
sure. And maybe I also might mention we're talking here about solitary retreat,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I think is like I mentioned, a missing piece in the American Zen world, but also group practice and kind of hybrid combinations of these. I
Mm-hmm.
think group practice is very important, and Um, if one has to do just one or the other, I
Mm-hmm.
think, especially newer practitioners, I highly recommend group
Mm-hmm.
practice. So good
Yeah,
for
and you're having an ongo in a month or so,
yeah.
right?
So that's
So
what I
it's
was
not
going
like
to
you
mention.
don't do communal practice at all.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we want to offer here at the Hermitage, in addition to solitary retreat, group retreats.
Hmm.
But since there's a lot of other places doing that, including the monastery just down the road from here,
Hmm.
Tassajara, uh, the focus may be more on solitary, but yes, last year we offered three short sessions, like 3 day sessions, trying them out.
Hmm.
And we're going to offer a 7 day session this summer and a 1 month
Hmm.
practice period. So
Hmm.
sort of like almost like a session, but a little bit more free time and some work time and some talking time,
Hmm.
and ending with a 7 day session. And
Who who's signing up for these? Is it mostly your students or just random people?
well, it's pretty minimal right now. So
Yeah.
this coming 1 month practice period, right now there's me plus three others pretty much signed up. And I thought that if there were less than four of us, sometimes they say four people is a traditional
Hmm.
sangha, a
Hmm.
minimum quorum for a sangha.
Okay.
Um, I thought if it's one drops out, I think we won't have it.
Hmm.
But I think we could do from 4 people up to 10 people. So it's
Hmm.
small enough place that the Zendo, you really can't have more than 10. And but if anybody hears this interview and has some background, especially maybe has done sesshin, Zen
Hmm.
sesshin before, some kind of retreat, group retreat, you're still welcome to apply to this 1 month practice period by just writing me, and we can talk. I
Okay.
think that the more the merrier, up to
Hmm.
10. And then we'll rotate, taking turns cooking, taking turns maybe being the doan for timing and for chanting and so
Hmm.
on. And maybe we do some one-day sittings. We did a few of those last year. Last year was the first year of this hermitage, so it's kind of experimental. And also then I myself um spend a lot of my year traveling around and offering sessions in other communities. So
Right.
I feel like it's not just a completely isolated life.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you're gonna be in Sacramento in a week or so.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so some group practice, some solitary practice, and some like online teachings. I also
Mhm.
end up doing a lot of that because it's such a remote place.
Right. Yeah, the book group that
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Have a good.
So another so some history of this place is I I was living. Let's see. I was the last community I really lived in for an extended time was at Santa Cruz Zen Center, and left there and was kind of my wife and I both wandering around from Zen Center to Zen Center as invitations to teach arose.
Mhm.
So kind of homeless for almost 4 years,
Mhm.
living out of the car and so
And
on.
you guys were going to go to Europe. If I'm not Europe, sorry, you guys weren't you guys going to go to Nepal? But then
That's
COVID
yeah,
hit.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it was right during COVID, right?
yeah.
So
Mhm.
that was a wonderful time to just be traveling and exploring and outside the more structured community life.
So really, the clouds and water.
A
Also,
little bit, not
yeah,
quite so rustic as those
yeah.
Chinese hermits. Um, but at some point, we should have a home base from
Hmm.
which to explore uh,
Hmm.
other practice places and teaching opportunities and so on, and at least like an address. So this place came to be when my parents died. I received some inheritance. That
Hmm.
good to invest it in some land and
Hmm.
um, and make it available to other people.
Hmm.
Because I've benefited so much from solitary retreats myself. I've done a lot of kind of 1 month ones in Crestone and in the place in Big Sur.
And even when you were at No Abode, I mean, sometimes it's just
Yeah,
you and one other person, or just you, right?
it's true. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know about
that
the
was
last.
arguably kind of a hermitage lifestyle as
Yeah,
well.
I think really the last maybe half year was really just me alone
Yeah,
there. But I would go to Green Gulch regularly,
yeah. Mhm.
living there
And
alone. But so we wanted to offer a place where, and my wife also has done a lot of these longer solitary retreats. So
mhm,
let's have a place where we can offer, especially to Zen people that we know that might not know about these opportunities, but also people of all traditions. We're both very engaged in Tibetan Vajrayana practice as well. And
mhm,
so we have a lot of friends in those communities. And we want to, I think a really part of the inspiration too is let's do the more traditional model of, if we can, of offer everything just by donation. No
mhm.
fees for anything.
People pay what they can,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah. And
is
that's very unusual in
right.
America. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even I mean, one of the exceptions is you can um, you can be a apprentice at like Tassajara in the summer and stuff like that,
that's true.
but that's a considerable time commitment. I think it's like a 6 month commitment to
Yeah,
really like fully
yeah,
engage in it. Whereas at your place, they can come for a day or a week or a
that's
month or
right. Yeah, I think you can go for shorter at Tassajara. I think maybe 2 weeks minimum.
but
But
you're paying if like I've been a guest student at Tessar a few times, and I was paying like $80 a day or some crazy thing.
I think these days, and this might be
Okay.
post-pandemic, I'm pretty sure the way it is right now is you
Uh,
can come free, it's a free exchange.
I
You
see.
get room and board, and
Mhm.
I think for as short as 2 weeks.
Okay.
The difference there is that you're working like 7 or 8 hour
You're right.
day.
And there's just one formal zazen a day, I think, if I, right?
Yeah, in the
Yeah.
summer, morning and
Yeah.
evening, and
I think is there even is there an even? I thought there was just one zazen. Is there two?
well, these days I think
Okay.
yeah, maybe an hour in the morning and a 40-minute period in the evening and morning.
Okay. Yeah. But it's not an intensive
No,
meditation experience. Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
So here people could do like a full-on doku sesshin on their
Hmm.
own, set, their own schedule or come to these group session retreats that we'll offer in the summer and so on.
Hmm.
And but it's it's a little more rustic here.
Hmm.
For the sessions, because with 10 people, people have to camp in tents. We don't have accommodation. But
Hmm.
for solitary retreat, we have one retreat cabin. And in order to offer it by donation, we thought, well, let's we don't let's just fundraise for
Hmm.
the cabin and we'll offer the land because we have like extensive areas of secluded land and if people can get it together with donations to build this cabin then those people and anybody else can come and stay there and that vision really was very successful. I think it was just a
Yeah.
few we raised enough to build
Yeah.
this kind of low cost, simple cabin,
Hmm.
but it's quite nice. It's quite far from the house here, or far enough that you wouldn't, if somebody was chanting or something, you wouldn't hear anything
Hmm.
or see anyone. It's on its own part of the land down below the Zendo here. And this cabin is it's a 4 tatami mat room, so that's it's like 8 feet by 12 foot
Hmm.
sleeping and practice room, and
Hmm.
then a tiny kitchen, like
Hmm.
a basically like a camper or a boat with a camp stove, a
Hmm.
small electric fridge, a sink with where you have to run a water filter, but you kind of have to fill it with a hose, and then a
Did you guys
tiny
pull electricity down there for the fridge, or is it solar?
no, it's solar. So
Yeah.
there's like one little battery and a solar panel is enough to do this modern technology has amazing
Hmm.
possibilities for things like it's basically a cooler, but with a freezer also, very low energy use, but enough like you might be able to, I don't know if you could fit enough food, cold storage for a whole month, but for a couple weeks probably, and then you could have other food up top. And then there's a
Sure.
small composting toilet and a sort of outdoor kind of sun heated shower.
Oh wow. I didn't know about the shower.
So it's really self-contained. One could be down there and not have to come out for anything.
Hmm.
And then we're offering like the system that they have at several of the retreats. I've done like the place in Big Sur. Um, if you're staying for longer, um, like the way that they do it there, and I think we'll offer here too. Every 2 weeks, like if someone were to stay for a month, in the middle after 2 weeks, they could leave a list, like a shopping list, and we would
Okay.
pick up that food for them. They'd
Uh-huh.
give the cash or something,
Mhm.
and then we could leave it somewhere in a bucket or somewhere where they could pick it up and not even have to have any interaction.
Great. And if I remember, you plan to maybe build more of those too, right?
More of these cabins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think right now, it's not being so used so often.
Okay.
So we definitely could do more,
Uh-huh.
but I think we're just waiting to see how much it gets used. The last summer was the first summer we had it,
Hmm.
and I think 10 people did do retreats there,
Hmm.
mostly short, like a weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 people did a week, and that was
Hmm.
the longest. So what we were offering is anywhere from 1 day to 30 days right now, maybe longer in the future, but not to
Hmm.
tie up the one place too long. And then for the shorter, from like 1 to 3 days, it'd be a little bit more interactive because I think a lot of people, especially Zen people, like that. So that would be like they stay down there most of the day on their own, but
Hmm.
then come up here for meals and for maybe group chanting
How about
and
Dokusan?
conversation.
Do you have a place for Dokusan?
And Dokusan
Do you
is
have like a Dokusan room, or how does that work?
not really, but there's
Yeah.
places to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's another on the list to build.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
What
think
do they
if
got?
more people came, there's enough land that you could build others. And if more people right now wanted to do it, we have like larger tents, some like stand-up kind of tents and
Hmm.
futons. So comfortable
Hmm.
glamping, as they call it, right?
Yeah.
With like carpet in there and so on. Maybe build a tent platform or two. And it's one step down from the cabin.
Hmm.
Um, and then we could expand as as needed. This cabin has a heater for the winter and kind of some roll down shades for the summer. And so it's really could be throughout the year used.
Very, very cool. Um, Anything else you'd like to add about the Hermitage or the land before I move on? Anything else worth mentioning or that you'd want to address?
Just so listeners know,
Yeah.
we're trying to gear it towards people who already have an established practice, not really beginners, because
Yeah.
it's a lot to maintain the discipline to do a solitary retreat and not just sort of hang out in a
Yeah.
nice place and read a book.
Yeah.
So
My second Zen experience was a 7 day session. I was maybe not the smartest planning on my part. I mean,
yeah,
it was. I mean, it was. I mean, I'm sure it bore some fruit in ways I could never
I'm
comprehend.
sure it
But it
did.
was.
Oh, there's
I don't
more.
think I did 10 seconds of meditation. It was just pure survival the whole time.
Survival mode. Yeah. And I think but the nice thing about group practice is it does create this like great support for when
Hmm.
things get really difficult physically and
Hmm.
mentally and emotionally. Everybody's sitting next to you and you're,
Hmm.
okay, I can keep going. So if
Yeah.
you're on your own, it's very easy to be like, this is getting hard. I'll just take a break.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like I did a. I think I can't remember if it was 5 or 7 day Tangario. And the way we did it, like we didn't do it in a Zendo. We were just like in a different room, and there was two other people doing Tangario with me, so I wasn't totally by myself.
is
But
this Sonoma Mountain Zen Center?
mhm, yeah, and that was harder than any session I've ever done. Like that,
Mhm.
like psychologically and physically, it was. I
No
mean
time
that.
periods.
Yeah, the only time you're allowed to get up is go to the bathroom or go to sleep at night, and people would take curiously long bathroom breaks, but yeah, that was just a different thing. It makes
Yeah,
session look effortless.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's great to have background in group practice, maybe
Hmm.
quite a bit, ideally, quite a lot of sessions before
Hmm.
doing, especially a longer solitary retreat
Yeah.
to make
Hmm.
it really, like for me, I do like a session schedule on my own, and but I'm so used to doing hundreds of them in a group setting.
Yeah.
So I just welcome any of your listeners who have group sesshin background and want to try a solitary retreat. There's other places around the country too, but this
Hmm.
one's open for anyone to apply. Then we
Hmm.
have a website, Bright Window Hermitage,
Hmm.
a website, and it has the kind of guidelines and description of doing solitary retreat
Hmm.
and some tips on it from me and
Okay.
the application form.
Okay. Great. So maybe this would be a good segue to another thing I want to talk about was your own solo retreat experience. You've done more than anyone I know personally, and I'm just curious, like, what, like, why do you do them? It doesn't sound like a silly question, but like, like, what dimension of practice do they provide that, like, just normal, like, kind of binge Zen practicing, like just going to sesshin once every, 1 to 5 times a year or something. Like
Mhm.
how's it a different level of practice, and like just like what would be a typical day for the solo treats you've done? Like just tell us about your solo treats, and
Yeah.
both like the motivation for them, the mechanisms of them, how they how they affect your practice in maybe in ways that sesshin or so forth have
Mhm.
not. If you could share all that.
Yeah. Well, most of what I've done is actually kind of lo longer, mostly like a lot of 1 month. I try to do at
Hmm.
least 1 month annual continuous
Hmm.
solo session for I think 10 years now. I think
Hmm.
last year was the 10th.
Hmm.
So it's a really important month of my year. It keeps me doing it. Basically, the way I've done at least the past few years is Zen Sesshin style. I think some of the earlier ones I was more involved in these like foundational practices of Vajrayana Buddhism,
Hmm.
which is a lot of like prostrations and
Hmm.
offering practice and mantra recitation a lot of the day, which in some ways is I shouldn't say easier or more difficult than sesshin, but it's doing something, so it's more
Mm-hmm.
it's engaging in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and along with a lot of zazen. So for I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe half of those month-long retreats, it was a lot of Vajrayana practice mixed with zazen.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the past few is more like I still do some Vajrayana practice, like a morning and evening,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe for just half an hour each. And
Mm-hmm.
the rest is like a more sesshin schedule. So I've been doing like 10 40-minute periods of zazen. And it's kind of traditional in all these Buddhist traditions to have these 4 sessions a day. So you have one early morning,
Are
usually
you
like
like burning sticks of incense
I'll use
for?
a timer,
Okay.
a phone app
And
timer.
then do you do like zazen, kinhin, zazen, kinhin, and then
Exactly,
okay.
exactly. So very much like a traditional Zen sesshin.
Mm-hmm.
Get up at 4, do like a couple of periods of zazen, do a full Zen chanting service by
Mm-hmm.
myself, which is maybe a little unusual for people because it's such
Mm-hmm.
a group practice thing. But I think a lot of the hermits in China will do these kind of devotional practices alone. Definitely in Vajrayana,
Mm-hmm.
it's mostly alone.
Are you doing like a soto, traditional soto?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Soto service and I
Mm-hmm.
really like Dharani practice. It's actually is kind of is Vajrayana called Kriya Tantra practice. It
Mm-hmm.
really made it into the Zen tradition in China and Japan in a big way. So various Dharanis that we do are a kind of tantric practice. They have their energy to create have different effects.
Mm-hmm.
So morning service, and then I'll do a Vajrayana mantra recitation, visualization, sadhana, breakfast, and then during breaks in these longer month-long retreats, I often do Dharma study. So
Mm-hmm.
in a Zen session, we're sometimes encouraged to not read anything or write anything because
Mm-hmm.
it just gets the mind conceptual. But I just find that if it's the right text,
Mm-hmm.
um, usually that means like a meditation manual or a traditional Zen text that's
Mm-hmm.
really like clarifying, or a Tibetan Dzogchen text
Mm-hmm.
that's clarifying particular points of meditation
Mm-hmm.
and maybe Vipassana. Um, Particular methods of meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
Then kind of read it some, then get some inspiration, and then bring it into Zazen. So I found that kind of thing very helpful. It's not the usual
Mm-hmm.
style of for Zen session.
Yeah.
And then do another 3 periods with kin between to a noon service. Um, have a lunch, have
Mm-hmm.
another break, do another 3 periods.
Are you interacting with your wife at all during these periods? Or are you guys pretty
So
much?
yes, here at the Hermitage because she lives here too.
Mm-hmm.
She's in this kind of semi-retreat all the time. Also, she has her own little kuti cabin where she spends a lot of the day.
Mm-hmm.
More, she's a Zen priest, but mostly is doing Vajrayana practice these days.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually get together for lunch and
Mm-hmm.
often with these, we'll talk during lunch. So
Mm-hmm.
because we're living in the same place, so
Right.
have some connection. But the morning and if it's all zazen, the rest of the time is mostly silent.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of periods in the evening, and then so that kind of sesshin schedule is typical for sessions. I've done about 10 periods. Sometimes they're more like 12, but this is for 30 days with no break, no days off.
Are you
So
finding you're getting into a deeper samadhi than you would otherwise?
it really makes a difference. Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes it even I notice that even sometimes it's about a week, about the time length of a normal sesshin, where of course the sesshin days are deepening
Mm-hmm.
already, but at the end of around 7 days, something drops even deeper. There's just like I lose track of time, and we're just
Mm-hmm.
every day is the same,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the mind becomes just more and more clear and spacious, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm a real fan of meditative inquiry practices. So really exploring different dimensions of
Can you give an
mind,
example
body.
for people who may not know what that is? like a practical,
Well,
concrete example.
yeah, and Tibetan Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions both have some of that, and you can find it in Dogen's teachings. And you could even say that the Hoshobo Genzo is kind of like is insight teachings offered, we might say, while you're reading them. But sometimes Dogen says during Zazen, inquire in this way.
Like,
So
so what would, if you can share it? I mean, maybe
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a
So
secret teaching or something, but like what would be it like practically speaking, what would be an
yeah.
inquiry that you do
Yeah.
during, you know?
So the key thing with this inquiry type of questioning is it's particular questioning, but it's very experiential. It's not like theoretical, like
Hmm.
what does emptiness mean or something. It's more like in my experience right now, sitting, I'm hearing sounds, for example,
Hmm.
and exploring, is this sound, outside or inside? And where's the division between the mind and the sound? And then,
Hmm.
is there any such thing as sound other than awareness itself?
Hmm.
Be an example.
Yeah,
Uh,
one thing I learned from you, and I've borrowed um, in some teaching I do, is you have people ask, "Is there awareness?" and
yeah,
and that's
that's
actually
the beginning.
and that's actually the first koan I give people.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
That's how I like to start. In a way,
yeah.
a very simple, the most basic inquiry question.
Hmm.
Is there awareness? Is awareness present? Am I
Hmm.
aware? And it's a question that demands a response.
Yeah.
So even though the answer, of course, will always be yes, th this awareness we're speaking of is the awareness is always present, but we're often not aware of that
Hmm.
awareness because we're caught up in the
Yeah.
content of
Yes,
thinking.
I find it can be really hard for people to be aware of awareness. I found.
Yeah, and this question I think is really I find is one of the great methods for discovering. Say,
Hmm.
am I aware? Well, yeah, I am aware. And
See,
in fact, the
I
only
don't even do
experience,
am I aware. I just say, is there awareness? Like, because
many ways to put it.
yeah,
Yeah. Is there awareness?
yeah.
And then when we can confirm and verify experientially, yes, of
Hmm.
course there is. You could say at the time that we're really verifying it, that is called awareness of awareness or
Yeah.
being aware of being aware.
And
And
then I
and
ask,
then what is it? Then we start exploring
yeah,
what is this awareness
yeah,
and what are its dimensions and
yeah.
qualities and so on.
Yeah, the next thing I ask people is like, what are the attributes of this awareness? And
Yes.
that's which is a little bit of an unfair question, but you still got to go through the process. Yeah.
Yeah, so traditionally there's questions like this to really deeply explore
Hmm.
and really shift the mind. So it's different than just calm abiding would be just like just be present and let go of
Hmm.
thinking. This is a
Hmm.
great practice, but that's just called shamatha,
Yeah.
calm abiding. And then insight may or may not, insight into non-duality, for example, may or may not arise,
Hmm.
but this inquiry practice is a little being a little proactive.
Hmm.
It's kind of priming the pump. It's kind of like, well, let's actually look at how things are when already settled in this present
Hmm.
being of
Yeah.
calm about it.
Yeah. I find adding inquiry to practice in any form, really, there's an energetic difference in the practice. Um, in ways I don't think I've ever successfully articulated, but it's just the way the body feels and the way the mind is receptive is just different when there's an inquiry involved
Yeah,
versus just samadhi.
yeah.
Yeah,
Shifts of perspective can happen for
yeah.
sure.
It's
And
just there's literally like an energy that's
yeah,
unlocked with
yeah,
inquiry that's
mhm,
not there with just calm abiding. I
yeah.
found,
So I think that this is one uh, maybe missing piece in modern Soto Zen practice too is that
Mm-hmm.
um, the understanding of shikantaza or just sitting, I think for many people
Hmm.
is just like a calm abiding practice.
Right.
Just sit, let go of thinking,
Hmm.
open the hand of thought. I would say the insight may arise, but
Hmm.
it may not. So if we look at the Buddha's practice, the Buddha speaks of his own awakening. He learned all these calm abiding concentration practices from
Mm-hmm.
other teachers in India and wasn't satisfied. And the
Mm-hmm.
night of his awakening, he was doing inquiry practice.
Mm-hmm.
He's, according to the sutras, he says, with the mind calm, flexible, buoyant through these calming practices, then I directed the mind toward understanding what is this
Mm-hmm.
suffering and its origin and
Mm-hmm.
its condition.
Yes, it's great.
So, so I think we can find it in Zen,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a little bit like it's not so methodical as maybe other traditions.
Yeah, I mean, there. I mean, I'd be curious if somebody did the calculation of how many times Dogen references a koan,
Exactly.
or to inquire into, or to look at. I
Yeah.
mean, it's got to be what 5,000 times or
Yeah.
something.
Mostly what
Across.
he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think it's true that in Rinzai Zen, um, usually they don't say koan practice is vipassana, meaning inquiry,
mm-hmm.
meditative inquiry, but it's similar. It's a
Mm-hmm.
similar flavor. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
um, it's not depending on how one's doing koan practice. I think there's different versions of it, but
Yeah.
one might actually sit with a koan
Mm-hmm.
as a kind of inquiry, not a using the words in this directive way, like is awareness present,
Mm-hmm.
but again letting the words shift the perspective in a
Mm-hmm.
kind of mysterious way with koan practice.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, as far as like shikantaza goes, I think it's helpful, at least for me. Just sitting. I kind of, I kind of see it more as a result of practice as opposed to a technique, if that makes sense. Like there's a big difference between like open awareness and sitting without a sitter. And and I think like true silent illumination or just sitting. That's when they're sitting without a sitter. It's not just simply open awareness
Exactly. So
meditation.
you
Yeah.
said that very nicely. I would agree. And this is, I think, kind of unusual perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So even in the Indian traditions, when the Buddha and ancestors are talking about shamatha, calm abiding, and vipassana, meditative inquiry that leading to
Mm-hmm.
insight, um, then they say combine them, and that union of calm abiding and insight is with no conceptuality or questioning at that point, because
Mm-hmm.
that's done its work. That's what I would call something like
Mm-hmm.
shikantaza or self-enjoyment samadhi. We use
Yeah.
terms in the Zen tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a little bit different to just sit after the mind has kind of like shifted its perspective into something like the non-duality of mind and the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then to sit in that in a non-conceptual way with the confidence in that non-duality is different than sitting before that confidence in the non-duality.
Yeah.
But it's subtle. It's
Yeah.
subtle.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So you've done a lot of Dzogchen type practice. I don't know anything about it. Is it basically shikantaza? I mean, is it like what like? I'm curious. Like what is Dzogchen for dummies for zazen for
Oh
Zen
yeah,
students? Like,
Dzogchen
can you
means
describe? Can you describe what the practice is? Like, what are you
mhm.
actually doing?
The term means the great perfection or the great completeness.
Mm-hmm.
So just like Dogen introduces his meditation instructions by saying the way is originally perfect and all pervading.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of flavor of the name for this practice in the Nyingma Tibetan tradition, the great perfection. Everything is already perfect and complete.
Mm-hmm.
Very traditionally, there's a lot of preliminary practices beforehand, both both the kind of just overall Vajrayana preliminaries that I was mentioning earlier, and then also Dzogchen preliminary practices
Mm-hmm.
particular to that tradition.
Are these mantras? You mentioned there's bowing. Are they like what is the is it just teaching people how to do samadhi and shamatha? I mean, is
Not
that
really. The Vajrayana general preliminaries are actually more like devotional. practices and kind
Mhm.
of like opening the heart, I would say.
So it's
So
like
that
an energetic attunement almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Okay.
they're practices that we have in Zen, all of these. And
Mhm.
I'm putting together a book very slowly on the kind of the Zen version of through Dogen's teachings. Dogen
Okay.
talks about all of these preliminary practices, but not in this particular structured way. So it's
Interesting.
basically refuge in Buddha, Dharma,
Hmm.
generating bodhicitta, the altruistic aspiration for awakening for all beings, confession and repentance, like karmic purification,
Hmm.
making offerings and generating merit, offerings to Buddhas,
Hmm.
and and then this the kind of like unity with the teacher's mind.
Hmm.
So those are the basic
Hmm.
Vajrayana preliminaries, and within in this ritual way where you're doing 100,000 of each piece,
Hmm.
so to really like drive the point home.
Hmm.
And then the Dzogchen preliminaries are somewhat similar, but they're more like uh, starting to explore non-duality, and they're a little bit like these inquiry questions that we're talking about are
Is this the
included.
pointing out practice? Is
Then
that what this
then the
is?
pointing out sometimes would traditionally come maybe even after those
I see.
preliminary. But I think a lot of Dzogchen people in modern times don't do the Dzogchen preliminary. It's called Rushen.
Hmm.
Um, Kurde Rushen means like distinguishing samsara and nirvana is the name of these uh, Dzogchen preliminaries. But the actual sitting part of Dzogchen called Trekchud
Hmm.
it means cutting through, and it's basically cutting through the illusion of duality,
Hmm.
and very similar in many ways to classic Chan and Zen teachings. It's based on Buddha nature teachings,
Hmm.
so Buddha nature experientially taught as non-dual awareness itself,
Hmm.
and which they, especially early Chinese Chan, I would say that's the main focus, or one of them anyway. Like mind itself is Buddha,
Hmm.
and ordinary mind is the way. These
And is this like a mantra you're saying to yourself, or are you like what is the actual practice? Like,
uh,
are these
well,
phrases you're repeating in your head, or
no, I'm
you
just
or you?
mentioning that
Okay.
these are Zen phrases that are
Yeah.
just to make the connection
I
that
see. Yeah.
that Dzogchen is based on those type of teachings. But
Uh-huh.
the actual Dzogchen meditation practice
Hmm.
is not doing any inquiry or anything. It's after the pointing out of the nature of mind, which would be like basically really kind of getting some taste
Hmm.
of non-dual awareness that might come through inquiry practice or something.
Hmm.
The actual cutting through practice is very much like just sitting, like it's a real non-doing practice, it's not doing anything.
Hmm.
But then I think very beautiful the way that the is often presented in Dzogchen is once you have this view, experiential view or understanding of non-duality, then what is the meditation?
Hmm.
It's just resting in that view. So
Hmm.
you're
So
basically,
it's not. I mean, so there's purposeful control of the arrow of direction to awareness itself. Is that
yeah, you could say that, yeah.
okay?
And getting more and more familiar with it so that there's less and less effort
Uh,
to do that or to change anything.
hmm.
So a lot of Zen teachings are very similar. Like it's not about trying to manipulate or change anything or improve anything or even to get rid of distraction or anything.
Hmm.
Once we really see, it's really emphasizing this deeply and experientially kind of getting the point of non-duality, but then
Hmm.
our habits are strong. So then just more and more simply being that non-dual awareness, which nothing needs to be changed or fixed or
So there has to be kind of a stream entry for this to work. It sounds like, right?
Yeah, stream entry. We could
Maybe that's not the right
some
word,
kind of
but there
entry.
has to be a glimpse into the nature of mind first,
That's
prior to this,
true.
right? Is that
That's in traditional Dzogchen, they would
yeah?
say, yeah, you have to have this pointing out instruction. And,
Hmm.
traditionally it comes with a meeting with a teacher and with this great devotion and open-heartedness so
Hmm.
that the words sink in and we have some direct experience that if we're like, oh, I don't really know about this teacher, maybe tell me, then
Yeah.
it's not really going to work. So I
Yeah.
have to be really open. And then you can find many parallels in Zen, traditional Zen, to this kind of
Mhm.
thing. Like the koans, like the teacher says something, and boom, the monk has great satori. So
Yeah.
we could call that as a kind of stream entry, some
Mhm.
and a new perspective, whether it's just a little bit or or more dramatic. But we kind of like, oh, now I see what non-dual awareness is
Mhm.
enough that um, that if distraction that pulls me completely away from that arises, then recognize again.
Could you talk about a little bit about Rigpa and its relationship to maybe the Zen's, you know, maybe the concept of Zen's idea of one mind
Mm.
or no mind.
Yeah. So
Could you?
Rigpa is a Tibetan name for non-dual awareness. So
Mhm.
just being this Rigpa. It's the Tibetan translation of the Sanskrit vidya, which means like knowing would be a good
Isn't there some
translation.
aspect of like the ground or ground or
Mhm.
like could you
Mhm.
how would you weave that in?
Yeah, sometimes when they talk about sort of the structure, when we're sort of being more discursive about Dzogchen, and actually all of Tibetan Buddhism has this framework. The ground is like the reality of what is, even though it seems to be obscured and hidden because we're deluded. So the ground, it would be like Buddha nature and really clarifying what we mean by Buddha nature or this undivided awareness is the ground of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And then the path is the practice that we do to kind of rediscover the ground. And
Mm-hmm.
then the result is when the practice has come to fruition
Mm-hmm.
and we basically um, the Buddha, the result. So in Dzogchen, because it's a non-dual tradition, they say, well, the ground, in a way, you could say the ground, the path, and the fruition are all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then within the path, that's sometimes also divided into the view, the meditation, and the conduct.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, the view is clarifying what we mean by non-dual awareness and having some taste of that. And then the meditation, as I mentioned, is just maintaining the view. There's nothing more than that. And then
It
the conduct is everything we do
mhm.
uh, while maintaining the view.
So is the official teaching that when the view is maintained, each moment the view is maintained, that is deliberative. Like one moment of view maintenance is one moment of liberation. Is that
Exactly,
okay?
exactly. And there's a lot of correlations in Zen.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who it was. I think one of the Rinzai Japanese ancestors said something like, one moment of Zazen is one moment of Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'd have to understand what we mean by Zazen here is like true Zazen is non-dual awareness.
Yeah.
And even if it's just for a moment, that's everything is complete. But then you could say, why do we have to practice? Well, because it was only one moment.
Yeah.
So, so then this continuity becomes an issue. That you could say the gradual aspect of
Mm-hmm.
Dzogchen is just stabilizing and finding more and more continuity in the
Mm-hmm.
view. And in longer retreats, that's what that's really about. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you could say it's clarifying any doubts, but more and more it's kind of extending and habituating to the view and bringing it off the cushion into
Mm-hmm.
first, ideally, really simple activities so we can see how it's not lost, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually more complex activities.
Yeah. I mean, drawing on my own Zen experience, I know a big challenge I had, and a challenge that spanned decades, was I was really conflating mind states with the view.
Mhm.
Where it was very important. Like I saw like you know, because a lot of times mind states correlate to the view, and so it was very important to me to get back into those mind states, and
Yeah.
I spent kind of wasted decades chasing mind states, and it was really it was a mixture of my ordination teacher John Shoji Sorensen, just the way he would teach me, and then also starting Zen Koan practice. Like it was the what is Mu Koan, like that for some reason made me realize what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I'm
Eh,
curious, how does Dzogchen, do they differentiate mind state from prajna, non-dual view,
yes, yeah,
or
exactly.
is this explicit, or is this a warning that's given, or I'm
It
curious
is, it is.
what
So
that's,
yeah,
yeah.
I think the classic way that Dzogchen would teach about this is they have this term nyam in Tibetan that
Hmm.
means like meditation states is one of the ways it's
Hmm.
translated. And the three classic ones are bliss, clarity, and non-thought.
Hmm.
And so they sound nice, right? But in
Right.
fact, they say like these are the things to watch out for in
Hmm.
Dzogchen
Right.
because they're just meditation states, or sometimes they translate yam as meditation moods.
Hmm.
So if you, and we love them, right? We love the blissful feeling. We love the clarity when things are vivid and clear. And we
Hmm.
love the not like this, like, no. So these are just, this is not the point. This is not the view. It's exactly what you're saying,
Hmm.
as I understand it. These are states that we can then chase after. But if we just And if we try to hold on to them or get them, then we're grasping them. And that's the basic problem. There's no
Yeah.
problem with them per se. And then it's sometimes said if we let them be and without grasping or um, holding in any way or trying to get to,
Hmm.
then they're revealed to be actually dimensions of the view in
Yeah.
the reality,
Hmm.
like even like non-thought in its reality, if really there's no manipulation, that's its nature is the Dharmakaya, and bliss, the meditation mood of bliss, in its true nature is actually the Sambhogakaya.
Hmm.
And clarity, the meditation mood of clarity, in its true nature is the Nirmanakaya.
Hmm. Yeah, I think in
But it
some
really,
ways. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
oh, just that yeah, it's not that Rigpa is in a way it's challenging because it has no particular state-like feeling or anything to it.
Hmm.
But it is this total openness and non-grasping, we
Hmm.
could say. But what is that?
It to me, like I'm a big belief that all the different types of Buddhism, Theravada, Vajrayana, more mainstream Mahayana, they all kind of like share like 95% of the core teachings. But one way I feel different than maybe my certain streams of Theravada brothers and sisters is they kind of feel like the jhana states are prerequisites to awakening, whereas I kind of feel like the jhana states are symptoms of samadhi that just that correlate to awakening but are not causative to awakening.
Mm,
And like and I think like even and like the bliss and then later the equanimity that comes from these jhana states, I think they can actually become like drugs that you chase. Like because I remember the first time I really came out of a sesshin like with like real kind of like really deep equanimity, like kind of like maybe fourth jhana state style, non-dual equanimity. Like that, I was like, this is what I want. And I was really upset when it went away.
yeah.
And like, and I just have a hard time. I don't know. I don't say.
Well,
It kind of sounds like I'm saying they're wrong. Maybe I'm saying that.
Well, like in my understanding is that in Theravada there's different schools,
Hmm.
and some really promote the jhanas as almost like necessary for awakening, and
Yeah,
some don't. Some say, well, the Buddha taught them, but they're not necessary.
yeah,
And actually, the Buddha learned them before he was the Buddha, right? And then he's just
that's
like, oh,
true.
these
Right.
are nice practices, but they're not the main thing.
Yeah.
Uh, And then it's funny because we have the Zen tradition. Chan and Zen is the translation of jhana.
Hmm.
So it's named after these jhanas, but in fact, I think early on, this
Hmm.
the Zen ancestors say, well, people thought that's what it was, so the name stuck, but it's not jhana.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's. I think they just saw a lot of people sitting on, like, oh, look at these
Exactly.
Dharma practitioners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's talk maybe a little bit about your koan practice. I know for a couple years now you've been working on koans. I'm just curious to hear, and as you know, I like koans too. But I'm curious how you got into koans, and I know you guys. When is the you have a group discussion through San Francisco Zen Center coming up, like Soto practitioners doing koans. When is that? Maybe.
In April,
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd recommend. I'll make sure this gets up before then. So you and about I think five other Soto Dharma holders are talking about your experience doing more traditional kind of structural koan practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just Soto, but particularly in Suzuki Roshi's lineage. That was
Okay.
my thought is like it's kind of unusual because
Yeah.
of course we talk about koans a lot in Suzuki Roshi lineage, all Zen talks about, but in this more kind of more classical, close to classical Rinzai koan practice where you're you're working with particular questions the
Mm-hmm.
teacher's giving and there's particular responses you have to demonstrate.
Mm-hmm.
That's in some of the, as you know, Soto lineages like the Maizumi and Aitken and Kapleau lineages are Soto with this Rinzai koan practice mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought that it's only maybe in the past 10 years or so that there's at least five Dharma teachers in the Suzuki Roshi lineage that
Mm-hmm.
are engaged in the the koan curriculum or offering it as
Mm-hmm.
teachers too. So it's kind of a new movement,
Mm-hmm.
and thought that would be good to just bring it out and acknowledge that this is happening. And I think it's because there's some wonderful benefits. It's not necessary, but
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy it as a kind of adjunct to other practices, including Vajrayana and
So,
Dzogchen. And
so you said there's some benefits. Could you talk about those benefits, or at least
yeah,
unique characteristics?
yeah. And I think this online workshop through Zen Center will talk about some of these things too. But
Mm-hmm.
then some things that come to mind for me are um, some practical things like Dokusan becomes very much more focused. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's Soto Zen classic Dokusan sometimes can be very focused, but it can also be sort of rambly and just whatever's coming up, and we talk, and it starts to stray into like what's my relationship with my parents, and all these things are fine, I think, to talk about, but this really the content of the Dokusan is the koan. And so in this way, also one is learning all the koans of the tradition. Often we'll memorize the koans and we really get to know them and go through all these classic collections, but not just hearing the story, but engaging with it.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, so the Dokasana is focused on, each koan has has its own checking questions and points. Um, Often each line of a longer koan, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what's this one? What's this about?
Mm-hmm.
And then having to not explain it, but to demonstrate it really directly and spontaneously and freshly and
Mm-hmm.
confidently. So I think in that way it trains the student over time to be able to respond to the world in that way too.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I'm a very highly active conceptual mind. I love Dharma study. I love like, unpacking all the teachings conceptually. And I think that's valuable. But the nice thing about this koan practice is it's not like that. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit like there are conceptual points in some of the more elaborate koans, but again, it's like how are they expressed
Mm-hmm.
most directly and simply and in almost childlike,
Mm-hmm.
naive sort of way. I find very beautiful, especially for my karmic tendencies. That's it's a good training for me.
Mm-hmm. And like, sometimes when I work with people with koans, I'll actually ask them, what are the dualistic conceptual distractions in this koan? And like, and I think when people do that, because a lot of suffering in life comes when people get caught by the conceptual dualistic distractions of the narratives that are being
So do you mean like when you're working with this koan, what are your
no,
kind
no,
of
like for example, like um like so the koan um I forget exactly the wording, but like um like what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West, or like 5 pounds of flax or something like that,
Mhm.
like what like so that koan is in some ways it's a lot of times it's a story or it's a declaration, and a lot of times the mind wants to like grasp at like the dualistic conceptual component of it, because like if I said to you like um
Like the
so we're
conceptual trap? Like what is the
yeah
three
like
point
what yeah
meaning?
like yeah trap, I try to say distraction because trap sounds a
Mhm.
little negative, but
Mhm.
like if I said like if I told you a story about what happened to my friend yesterday, you would be following it narratively,
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
understand it, right? And I think a lot of times, um, I think one of the advantages of koans is seeing how often the mind wants to do that,
Yes, yes.
and when you can see through that, then the koan kind of manifests itself from
Mhm.
a non-dual perspective,
Yeah.
that it makes sense from a non-dualist perspective, where it's like literally nonsensical or confusing or even misdirecting from a dualistic conceptual point of view. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so like, so I was just kind of
Yeah. That's a
elaborating on
great
what you're
point.
saying a little bit.
And I think a lot of the koans are designed to pull
Right?
to test the student. Are they going to fall into the
Yeah.
conceptual distraction?
Right. Like nonsense cat. Like everyone's like, what? He killed a cat. Like you
Yeah,
can't do
yeah,
that as a Buddhist priest. That
yeah,
like that's one of the juiciest distractions that pull people in. You're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what?
And then like all this
But
interpretations of
yeah.
putting the sandals on the head too, right? Um,
Right.
well, and we of course we can
Yeah.
endlessly just think about if this
Hmm.
is symbolic for that. And sometimes there is symbolism in the koans, but sometimes, especially
Hmm.
for the direct responses, even
Hmm.
symbolism can sometimes be a distraction.
Hmm. Um, yeah. And another thing I like about koans, and because like when most people think about koans, they see them as like intellectual exercises. And very paradoxically, probably to a lot of people, I think koan practice gets us out of our heads and into our bodies. And like, it makes practice an embodied experience that
Hmm.
that can be sometimes just missing from Zen, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Fresh,
Mhm.
present, direct,
Yeah.
non-conceptual,
Yeah.
learning to express
Uh-huh.
oneself in that way that
Uh-huh.
then can carry over into daily life to some
Hmm.
extent.
Yeah.
All of that. And of course, there's the classic way of talking about them is they're a little bit like the Vipassana questioning. They can create these pivotal shifts of perspective.
Hmm.
Once one gets used to it, maybe there's not like big dramatic shifts going through after maybe years of
Hmm.
koan practice. That maybe isn't so likely. But I think the early koans like Mu
Hmm.
are kind of designed to create some kind of shift of perspective.
Right.
And some,
Uh,
whether that's dramatic or slight,
hmm.
I think that's a big piece of it. And then the checking questions. are designed to clarify the new perspective.
Hmm. I'm curious, like in your, and I know we've talked about this a little bit offline, but I'm curious, like how stark and clear do you think that shift of perspective should be to pass through a barrier con like Mu or Who Am I or who?
Yeah, big topic,
Yeah.
big topic. And so the teacher I've been working with, Dosho Poor Roshi, he's really like he's kind of old school and like
Mm-hmm.
it should it should be it should be a breakthrough
Hmm.
kensho clear as as the palm of your hand, you know,
Hmm.
like and it's just and then you can keep somebody on move for many many years, and that is kind of a classic way.
Hmm.
Um, uh, and then eventually maybe that happens. But I think that maybe classically when that happens in the
Hmm.
Rinzai monasteries, people are doing a lot of zazen. They're doing a lot
Right.
of sesshin, and that's when it often happens. So I think in the modern American um, version of koan practice, it's maybe not going to be that dramatic some of the time, but
Hmm.
I think a lot of the traditional koan teachers will say, well, even if it's not um, a big dramatic shift, that's
Hmm.
the beauty and virtue of the check-in questions.
Right.
Like in this, my tradition is maybe 20 check-in questions on Mu, and that if it's a little bit of insight, those questions almost in a more slightly gradual way open
Hmm.
up the full
Hmm.
uh, insight into Mu. So
Hmm.
I feel that way.
Yeah. What,
What do you think?
what do I think? Well, I used to be more traditionalist how I felt about it, but I've done almost a 180. Yeah, I think here's what I think. I think the Koan curriculum can meet the student where they are. I think if somebody's had a pretty clear, decisive insight into the nature of reality, I think the koans can meet the teacher there. I mean, can meet the students there. I also think I think the koan curriculum can also be, like you're saying, more of a gradual way of chipping away at somebody's, conceptual dualistic way of looking at reality, and it could be more of a gradual. Yeah, and people tend to. I think people will tend to start. They will have shifts along the way. It just doesn't necessarily have to be right at the beginning. I think there could be
Hmm.
like little cracks in the wall of reality, and eventually, like a bigger chunk will come out. But it might like go back real quick and like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah,
Like sometimes
yeah, yeah.
like
And also, so it could be later on, but and it
yeah,
also could be long before beginning koan practice, especially
right,
if somebody already has a Zen practice
right,
for a long time. Like maybe all of these Suzuki Roshi lineage teachers have been practicing Zen for decades before they
hmm,
started koan practice. So
yeah,
that's a different way
hmm,
than the maybe more classic Rinzai way. So there's this one article by Victor Hori that maybe you've seen where
hmm.
I think I really like his writings because he's a academic scholar, but he spent
I've met him.
decades
He's great. Yeah,
in Daitokuji, right,
yeah,
as a monk there.
yeah,
So he has this very experiential background in koan practice, but he's writing about it as almost sociology
hmm,
and understanding of non-duality. So one thing that he wrote that I thought just to get a reality check. Daitokuji is very, as I understand, quite a traditional Rinzai Zen monastery. It's one of the great five mountains in Kyoto and so on. And when he
yeah,
was there, his report is that all the new priests, mostly in their 20s, young men coming to
hmm,
practice there, had no Zen background or no like Zazen background. He said they
hmm,
were all really new to Zazen. They maybe never done sesshin before,
hmm,
and they hadn't studied any Buddha Dharma.
hmm,
And they came to the monastery like this, and they were all given Mu Koan when I think they arrive.
hmm,
And he said most people, you know, start passing through Mu within 6 months to a year
hmm,
after arriving. So I thought
yeah,
that's interesting. That's
yeah,
like not such a, I mean, Muman, who put together the
yeah,
Muman, was 6 years in the monastery working on Mu
yeah,
and then had a really big breakthrough.
right,
But I think people with no background 6 months. I mean, they're probably having Dokusan maybe every day. Is a
At
difference.
least twice a day.
And they're doing a lot of Zazen.
Yeah.
And but that's, they're probably, and I think he said, and a lot of them it's not like a really major breakthrough, but then
Yeah.
as they start to work through the other koans, their perspective shifts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, yeah. Well said. I agree. And I've known people who practice there, and they've said most monks that are there because they're obligated to take over their family's temple business. So they're not there with any level of great aspiration.
True.
They're there so they have to.
Yeah. And
And
part of what they have to do is at least go through the beginning of the koan curriculum.
yeah. But one person told me that I thought was really great was the practice is so rigorous. Your motivation for being there is almost irrelevant. Like even it breaks you down and like wakes you up despite yourself.
It's
You
yeah,
don't need motivation or aspiration.
yeah,
Just the mechanics of it.
yeah.
Just
Just get thrown in there and be
yeah,
pummeled around and it'll do
yeah,
its work. Yeah.
yeah. So we've been talking for a while. Do you have time for another topic, or do you want to do a part
Sure.
three sometime? Or okay.
Sure.
Um, so I want to talk a little bit about your views of psychedelics in practice. Um, I mean, we both, I think, came to practice through what was shown to us at Grateful Dead concerts, or maybe that's more true of me. I don't know if you would articulate it exactly that way, but I'm pretty sure I never would have opened a Zen book if you know Jerry Garcia hadn't played and sung the way he did, and
I did have a lot of profound psychedelic experiences at dead shows, but also not at dead shows, like
yeah,
being out in nature, that kind of
hmm
stuff.
yeah, okay. And so I'm curious if you could kind of triangulate um, um, the relationship between the psychedelic experience, awakening, and samadhi. Like where, like, like,
Another tough topic, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious. Like, can people experience awakening through psychedelics? Do you think? I mean, just as a very blunt question, do you think any of those experiences could be qualified as bodhi or awakening? Maybe not full liberation, of course.
Like Bodhi's a big term, right?
Yeah,
But
I mean, so
something
maybe,
like
but maybe
Tenshin.
like seeing nature. Do
Yeah.
you know, um,
Yeah, or some sense of non-duality,
yeah,
uh, even if it's just a glimpse.
yeah,
Uh, I think there's correlation there. Yeah. And
uh-huh.
it might be in a very different kind of mode
Mhm,
than through Zen practice, where Zen practice it
mhm,
may be like very deep in samadhi or very, very still and concentrated in
mhm,
sesshin mode and have a glimpse or more of non-dual awareness.
mhm,
Non-duality can be many things. I think the key maybe uh, root non-duality is the
mhm,
non-duality of subject and object. That's really
mhm,
the Yogacara tradition is
mhm,
emphasizes that as the key to awakening.
mhm,
Understand it. But there's also the non-duality of Buddhas and sentient beings, the non-duality of awakening and delusion, and
mhm,
I think various types of non-duality. And they're all related, but slightly different. And I think all of them, it basically, they're all involve kind of breaking through or seeing through the conceptual construction of dualities.
mhm,
And I think that, yeah, I think many people with psychedelics, not like all the time,
mhm,
but maybe more often than not with psychedelics, there are
mhm,
these moments of like experiential, like there aren't that conceptual construction um, is like not operating.
mhm,
And I think studies also are saying it's very similar. Whatever's going on in the brain in states of samadhi are very similar
mhm,
to maybe not states of samadhi. Maybe what I've heard is that um, what's going on in the brain in insights into no separate self is very
Mm-hmm.
similar with going on in the brain with psychedelics, and often it's spoken of as you probably heard, the default mode network, right?
Mm-hmm.
They say this sense of the separate self is this is now we're talking biology, kind of like in cognitive
Neuroscience.
science,
Yeah.
neuroscience, yeah.
Yeah.
That they say that sense of self is not like we have places in the brain that are for seeing and hearing and so on, we know, but
Mm-hmm.
the sense of self is not located in a certain part of the brain. As the scientists now say, it's created, the sense of separate self is created by the so-called default mode network, which is
Mm-hmm.
lots of different parts of the brain functioning amazingly
Mm-hmm.
um, together, dependently arising together to create this sense of self. And that network that's that's that functions that way um, in a non-dual meditations, for example, you could say that that network it gets kind of like broken up, and then
Mm-hmm.
with psychedelics, they seem to also um, chemically dismantle the default mode network. So this is just some scientific background,
Mm-hmm.
and I think experientially it also rings true.
Mm-hmm.
But the non-duality might not be like in this very peaceful space, it might be just like everything I thought about myself is like doesn't hold up anymore. That could
Yeah.
be the insight. And
Yeah.
that's a real insight.
I've been around quite a few people who are bad tripping on psychedelics,
Oh,
and generally, not always, but I wouldn't even say generally, but often enough that it's notable. A lot of the bad experiences I think come when people are thrust into a non-self scenario and they're like, "I'm dead, I'm dying, I don't like,"
yeah,
it is, it's just such a,
yeah,
this the floor, the floor is like disappears from under them, and it's just and just that, like, I'm dying, whereas because like
yeah.
the self construct is dissolving, and they're like, no,
Yep,
like,
yep.
yeah.
I've been there. And yeah, I think we could I think that's a great way to put it is that
Yeah.
um yeah, what a so-called bad trip is when trying to maintain our usual sense of identity as a separate self. And
Right.
it's not going to work because it's not true.
Yeah.
And it's being ripped away from us faster than we want, which Zen practice has the virtue of usually not ripping it away too
Hmm.
dramatically. But yeah, so then many things we learn from the psychedelics over time is like, well, the way to avoid or to get out of a so-called bad trip is just total surrender.
Hmm.
There's no other way.
Yeah.
Any resistance is the separate self.
Hmm.
And I think we learn that in Zen too, especially Sesshin.
Yeah. Um, Great. Oh, there's one other thing I meant to ask you earlier. If you could indulge me with one more question. We were talking about shikantaza. Um, it's like what shikantaza was, and its relationship to practice. So I'm curious. I mean, I know I've sat in a lot of your ceremonies, and you have a lot of advanced practitioners as people who seem to be drawn to you. But when a newbie comes, or you're at a residential place and you're kind of teaching newer students, um, how do you think they should be introduced to Zen? Do you think they should be taught shikantaza, open awareness practices from the get go, or do you think should they start with breath counting? Because I know what makes me think about this. I've seen some of these debates online recently. Some people even in the Suzuki Roshi lineage ecosystem think day one you teach them shikantaza, where other places, and even Suzuki Roshi himself would teach breath counting, or at least focus on breath first, and then once there's some stabilization of of concentration, or not concentration but attention, then maybe they could work on shikantaza. So I'm just curious what your opinion is. Like, do you have an opinion of this?
That's another great question.
Yeah.
These are challenging questions that I think people would have many different
Mm-hmm.
opinions on a lot of these
Uh-huh.
points. So the way we were talking about shikantaza earlier, right, was distinguishing it from just calm abiding,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the present and letting go of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make that distinction that that's very similar. We could call it just sitting,
Mm-hmm.
but then the true shikantaza would be after having some resonance with the view of
Mm-hmm.
non-duality.
Mm-hmm.
Then, so I think that is hard to teach to beginners because how do you bring in the whole view and everything? But I think that um, to sit in the present and just let go of thought, which I would technically define as like shamatha or calm abiding without a meditative object. And
Mm-hmm.
in Tibetan Mahamudra and Dzogchen, that's a common practice. And
Mm-hmm.
the descriptions sound like many people would teach shikantaza. Just be totally present, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever arises, just let it go. And
Mm-hmm.
they say that's not at all what we mean by the culmination of Dzogchen or Mahamudra. It's
Mm-hmm.
a kind of preliminary practice, but it's a really good one, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very similar um, to
Mm-hmm.
the final non-dual realization. So I think that kind of calm abiding without a support like the breath, without
Mm-hmm.
an object, um, yes, I think for some people that can work. And in fact, like my Dzogchen teacher, Tsoknyi Rinpoche, has been working with Western students for 20, 30 years or something, he
Mm-hmm.
feels like this is a really good, actually, introduction to meditation for a lot of people. If you
Mm-hmm.
tell them to follow the breath, they'll get really involved in trying to do this thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's too like clunky and kind of like stressful for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So actually first learn the calm abiding without an object, and as you settle more into the present and relax with yourself, then you can start learning to follow the breath later. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit non-traditional, but he
Mm-hmm.
teach it that way. And still he would say that's still you haven't had the view pointed out yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as that kind of inquiry practice where we might open to the view, I also think sometimes for some new people, that might work if it's kept really simple. Like, for example,
Mm-hmm.
um, is awareness present?
Mm-hmm.
Am I aware? Just
Mm-hmm.
like to ask a question like that, really simple, very experiential. You have to
Mm-hmm.
explain a little bit what we mean by awareness, not like, am I concentrated? Am I present? Just is there any kind of awareness at all? I go, oh, well, yeah, but I never noticed that before.
Mm-hmm.
I think new people can get that, and then for some, the breath will be really good because it's very uh, direct. It's very simple to explain. It's very clear whether you're doing it or you're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose, and especially counting to 10, if you lose track, go back to one. You either are or you aren't. So it's the others are a little more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
But various teachers I have who have different sides of that story. I think maybe Rinzai Zen traditionally and the Harada Yasutani lineage, they really like teaching. Everyone start with the breath, get um, really get proficient at being able to stay with your breath because you develop some
Mm-hmm.
concentration, some um, entrance into samadhi.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think for some people, yeah, the breath becomes hard to we get to gaining an idea around it or
Yeah.
too self-judgmental.
Yeah. I think people who have some OCD tendencies, I think breath
Mhm.
counting becomes a horrible practice for
I
them.
bet, yeah, I could see that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course the danger in calm abiding without an object is just spacing out and not even noticing that we're just
Yeah.
like
I
actually there's this underlying daydreaming and just
yeah. I remember. I can't remember where I read this, but I was reading. Maybe it was an interview or something with Norman Fisher, or maybe he was writing an essay. I don't remember, or maybe even a book. But he was saying like when he became abbot of Green Gulch, was it Green Gulch or the whole? I think maybe just Green Gulch.
yeah, abiding at Green Gulch, but yeah.
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 He says like for the first time I really started doing dokusan with a really wide variety of people, and he says like I was kind of horrified. I'm totally, he didn't use this exact language, but he says I was really horrified with how many people were just sitting there wasting their time in zazen, letting their mind wander
Yeah.
where it wanted to go. He's like I don't know who's been teaching them this, but this is
Yeah, 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 yeah. Calling it just sitting, don't do anything.
yeah.
So I think the Dzogchen tradition has a very beautiful saying about this type of meditation where they call it non-distracted non-meditation. So I
Hmm.
think that really captures a lot because the non-meditation is don't do anything, like
Hmm.
just don't try to do any meditation. You're really not doing anything.
Hmm.
But it's also not distracted. Distracted means anywhere other than the present.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times what I try to articulate to people is it's not so much thinking versus not thinking; it's present versus time travel. I think that seems to be the
Yeah,
pivot point that is really
yeah,
helpful. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes I'll say
Yeah.
that in intro to Zazen is like bottom line, there's lots of different types of meditation practices that can be done
Hmm.
even within Zen. But what they all share, what they all have in common is they're always about the present.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's the perfect last sentence for our interview. All right.
Right now.
Yep. All right.
Thank
Well,
you so much, Barry. Always
yeah.
good to
Thank
talk
you.
to you.
It's great to connect, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll end now.